everyone, welcome back to my channel and you're watching The Brown Feminist. You can see I'm actually in the process of moving from Montreal back to Ottawa and starting my new role. But this video is actually going to be a little bit serious and intense because I really want to share with you what exactly happened in this 2 or 3 week long negotiation process as I took on this new role as a CRA level 3. So without further ado, let's get into it. Now, if you recall from my last video, which I did in the countryside where I was celebrating Easter, I had just been offered a position as a clinical research assistant 3 in an actual hands-on clinical trial environment, and I was really excited about it. But I really want to tell you guys that before we get too excited about any kind of job offer, we really need to be using our instincts, our intuition, and just making sure that all kind of the loose ends are tied and we have a very realistic picture of what is coming up. In my case, I have had poor experiences in the past where the employers and me were maybe on a different page and we didn't have the crystal clear understanding of our expectations, both salary-wise, benefits-wise, in terms of hours and kind of the workload. So this time I kind of made sure that I was asking all the questions, even if at one point I was I might get a little annoying for the HR person or for the manager, but I will ask all of my questions before signing a contract. And so day one happened and I got a more casual kind of offer in an email just an hour after my second interview. And they were like, guess what? We really liked you. Welcome to our team. Congratulations. We're ready to offer you the position. And of course, I was super happy and excited. I was like, oh, that will be so amazing. I would love to work with your team and your project. Very natural reaction. So in the coming days, of course, we had Easter and we had the weekend. So everything was a little bit slow. But a couple of things that I was expecting next is probably an email from HR with the official contract and the rate of pay being offered and things like that. Unfortunately, that's not the way that it went. So up came the Tuesday and the Wednesday and then the Thursday, and I was getting a lot of paperwork. I was starting my training. I was getting forms which asked for employee information, my SIN number, my nationality, my ID cards, and my home address and my past qualifications, asking for copies of my certifications and everything that I was happy to provide. However, one thing just didn't keep coming, and that was the rate of pay. Now, when I had originally applied to this particular job, there was a range. Instead of a particular salary, there was a range given on the website. The range, sadly, was very wide, right? So it started I would say it was an hourly range given, but if you consider it annually, there was almost a $10,000 difference between the minimum amount of that range and the maximum amount, which definitely meant that I really needed to know where in that range they think I fall based on my experiences. Another reason for that is because the range was not necessarily completely higher than what I'm making now. So I was already making somewhere between the minimum and the middle of that range, which means if they're offering me something equal to or less than what I'm making as a CRA level 1, it wouldn't have been worth it for me to make this transition and taking on more role and responsibility. Now, this is not a universal kind of knowledge or universal kind of advice I want to give you, because for each of us, the situation is different. But I want to say that at minimum, do a pros and cons column. If you think you're taking a pay cut, but you're moving to an industry that you love and it's going to open a lot more doors, it might be worth it for you. In my case, I was already in the industry that I loved. It was more about just moving to a little bit higher title, a little bit more responsibility, and moving to the particular research niche, the clinical trial niche that I wanted to move into compared to qualitative clinical research. For me, that move would not be worth it if I was getting a pay cut. However, I was willing to work for what I'm already making or more. So I sent out an email on the Tuesday, and then the Wednesday I was like, hey, just wondering, happy to start my training and happy to provide all the documentation, but just wondering what the rate of pay would be. So the reply I got back was hey, we don't determine it, HR determines it. And of course, in a large scale hospital, the HR is huge and there's lots of different people doing it. It's not all the same person. So that was understandable. So what I heard back from that email from the manager was that it will be somewhere in that range, of course, but the exact amount would be determined by HR. I'm like, okay, I'm willing to wait a day. The next day rolls around and like more work is being done. And now at this point, I'm doing like 5-6 hours worth of training. So as I embarked on this, I'm like, am I really sure this is the job for me? Therefore, I should hold back from resigning my other job before I know the pay rate. Secondly, hold back on doing unpaid training hours before I know the pay rate. Thirdly, hold back on any other life changes or expectations around this job before I know that this is the job I'm going to actually take. Nothing is really set in stone unless you've signed the contract, it's put through, and you have your day one of your work. So I know we make a lot of life decisions as soon as we get an offer, but a lot of times the offer might have a lot of other aspects tied to it. So these are some of the like red flags to like kind of watch out for. And even if it's not necessarily that the employer is bad or they didn't mean ill against you or anything, they weren't trying to be tricky. Maybe it's just sometimes, there's not enough clear communication, or they don't understand how important the pay is to you. Because for a lot of students, maybe they're staying at home. The money is just like maybe not as important. For me, I live alone, I have a lot of financial responsibilities, and I also feel like I've kind of earned the fact that, I have all of this experience and now I'm moving up. So I need to at least be recognized for the work that I'm doing. So Wednesday rolled around and I got an email back and I was like, hey, I'm happy to do this. I still haven't heard back about the rate of pay. Usually before I sign all of this stuff, I usually get to know my pay rate. So is it possible to get that to me? So at that point, finally, many more emails later, first I got an assessment of what it would likely be. And then finally, later in the evening, I got the actual email from the HR stating the position. And the position was the very minimum of that pay scale, which means not only was I not getting a raise, but they were expecting me to take a pay cut. So at that point, I had to have a difficult conversation. And a lot of these times, I know people like us, you and me, we might back out. We're like, no, it's such a good opportunity. Do we really want to let it go? But for me, I spoke to my partner, I spoke to my best friend, I kind of did my pros and cons column, and I knew that I have another like role that I can keep staying on in. So it has to be worth the move. And they were like, but if you say this, you'll lose the job and you'll do this, and you really wanted to work for that particular hospital or for that particular MD, PhD. But at the end of the day, I took a difficult decision and I was like, listen, I really appreciate it, but this is my current rate of pay, because they didn't know that before. And so basically, maybe you're not aware, but the amount you're offering me is a pay cut. And as much as I love the role, I love your team, I think we gel really well. I think we're very similar, like career goals as well. And I really want to do this work, but I just can't afford to take a pay cut. I'm sorry. So this was a very big hit or miss kind of challenge. I went ahead with it, I did it, and I got an email back a few hours later. And that email said that, okay, we understand that. It's understandable, it's unfortunate, but let's see what we can do. Because they were also having a hard time, because their institution itself has its own pay scale. And according to them, anybody who enters at this kind of title would need to start at this salary. And only after you grow within the organization, that's when the range comes into play. So that's the rule there. That's fine. It's not in the PI's hand, but it's also not in my hands. It's unfortunate that I cannot accept it. In the end, because they did like me enough, they started pulling some strings, and they were like, maybe, because you do have more qualifications than the typical person entering this role, maybe we can get you some extra work there and therefore justify kind of paying you what you're asking for. Or maybe you can take on a little bit more workload, a little bit more of grant writing, a little bit more of supervising junior students and new hires. And that way we can kind of do these add-ons. So end of the day, we are still negotiating. It has been a while. But I have a very good feeling about the way that they are responding to it, because I do feel like they're not okay, too bad, it's a corporate environment, you don't like it, counter offer, and then goodbye. No, it hasn't been like that. They've really shown that they value me as a candidate. They've told me over the phone that, listen, you were our most competitive candidate in the hiring process, and we do want to work with you so that you and I can both get what we want out of this. You are happy with what you're making, and we are happy with the quality of work you're doing. So let us try a few different avenues to see if we can reach that golden number. And if it doesn't work out, we're both okay with it. But there seems to be a couple of options that have already popped up. I don't want to say too much exactly like what exactly is going to happen, because, you know, I think it's going to need another day or two. Today's a Friday, so it might go on into Monday or at least tonight. But in general, I just want to give an idea about red flags and about the whole hiring process. Is wait until you see the number on the contract. A lot of the times things are said verbally, a lot of the times things are on the ads. They don't always pan out, right? Sometimes they will include your benefits when they're marketed on the ad. Sometimes when you remove the benefits portion, your base pay is not as high. Sometimes there is a bonus that's guaranteed, but then once you're actually signing the contract, you learn that the bonus is like depending on funding or depending on this or depending on additional work being available. So you really want to ask all of these questions and have a very clear picture before you accept a job. And I am kind of proud of myself at this point, because after past poor experiences, I feel like, yes, I am super excited about this job, but I'm also like taking it one step at a time, asking all the right questions, setting the right expectations, and moving forward like that. So it seems like the negotiation process is gonna go stretch a little longer, and I will make another video to update you guys on what happened. But guys, please, if you do not see the pay written down on your contract, keep asking about it. Don't start like your training, don't quit your job, don't decide a new apartment rental or move or other major life decisions before you have things in writing and you've read through the contract thoroughly and you know exactly how much your health, your dental benefits are, how much like vacation pay you're getting, how much your base salary is, how much you're making after taxes, what the other expectations are. For example, this role is the first role that I'm doing in like almost a year where I have to be there in person the full time. All my other roles were either remote or hybrid because of COVID. So over here, of course, like there's gonna be commuting factors, there's gonna be like other roles, like when I have to stay back, the overtime really counts as like overtime. So all of these things need to be considered before you make this decision. So for negotiation, ask questions. What is my pay? What are my benefits? How many weeks a year do I get off? A lot of the times you can like get a very vague thing like, oh yeah, we get 3 weeks off. But you as a new person on probation might not be eligible for that. A lot of organizations have rules that say for every year you've worked there, you gain like X number of extra vacation days. So only after you've worked there for 5 years, you get 3 weeks. Just because your boss gets 3 weeks or another colleague on the hiring committee gets 3 weeks doesn't mean you'll get 3 weeks. So it's really important to have those expectations met at the very beginning before you take on that role. Okay, so good luck negotiating. If you guys have other exciting or like weird or uncomfortable or like strange negotiating experiences, please do share them with me in the comments down below. And to keep staying up to date with my story, please do hit the subscribe button. I would love to make more videos and kind of keep updating you guys live as the weeks are passing about what exactly happens with this job. But it is a cool job. These are really nice people. There's a really great organization, obviously, and that is why I'm excited about taking the role. But I've learned with time and experience and a little bit of wisdom not to get overly excited unless all of the blocks have fallen into place. Until next time, this is the Brown Feminist. Bye.